with my delightful, beautiful co-host, Nikki La Rochelle. And this is going to be a adventure.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Adventure. And we're going to basically introduce each other, tell you about us, and then what topics that we will attempt to attack, but we want to entertain, educate, and excite all of our viewers, listeners, both.
Well, you're on YouTube. So
right.
You got viewers on YouTube.
Yes.
What's your YouTube handle?
It is Teddi Jan 5423, I think. Teddi Jan Koval. Just look for Teddi Jan Koval and it will come up. I don't think there's any other.
Teddi Jan's. TEDDI
hyphen JANN, two N's, Koval in the world.
How did you get your name, Teddi Jan?
Thank you, Nikki, for asking.
Let's just
start there. First of all, my dad was a football, baseball player at UMaine in the 50s who was a devoted Red Sox fan. Baseball was really probably his best sport. And so he met my mom senior year at UMaine, and they got married that March before he graduated, and poof. I brought them together, let's just say. And so my dad was positive he was going to have a boy. Okay?
Yeah.
And just like Tom Brady, that's why you have all these kids named Brady now, their first names after Tom. Well, he named me after Ted Williams, and my mother's first name was Janet.
Nice.
So they hyphenated it Teddi Jan.
Teddi Jan.
Because, well, there was no ultrasound, things like that.
Right.
There was no big the gender reveal happened the day you were born. Okay. Positive was going to be a boy, I was going to be a boy, but poof, I was a girl, so there you go, Teddi Jan.
I love it.
Well, and Nikki, tell me.
Well, this is a story I know about, but Nikki was actually a soap opera star on Young and the Restless, and apparently my father really liked her. So there you go. It's Nicole and Nikki.
I remember that.
That's the story. That's just what goes around.
Well, let's just talk about how you and I met.
Yeah.
Because Nikki is a fun-loving, creative, over-the-top creative businesswoman, and she's 20 years younger than me, probably.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more.
We won't talk about our ages.
No ages, politics, or religion on this.
But actually,
podcast.
I don't mind talking about my age because I just gave it away. I was born in the 50s, so.
I was born in the 80s.
There you go. So we have different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Being women, born in Maine, raised in Maine, and making a business in this Pine Tree State. So, Nikki, do you want to tell our viewers, listeners, how we met?
Well, I mean, the story can go on forever, how we met, the reason that we did meet, but I basically found my passion for art, for painting again, and wanted to get more involved in that. So I started at the Bangor Art Society, where you were the president for 10 years? And the first year, I don't think we really interacted that much.
I'm interacted more with Dustin, your husband.
Yes, because he was the one that dropped off all of my paintings because I was working so much, and you would have a show and I'd be like, here, drop this off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then we just, over the years, just became more
Well, I coerced you into being on the board. of the Bangalore Society.
Yes, you did. Yep.
And then we got to know each other better and better.
Yep.
We did paint out on Swan's Island.
Yes.
Because you have a connection with Southwest Harbor.
Yes. Yep, we do. We owned a condo down there because we were living down there. So I've been an emergency room nurse for over 10 years. Before that, I was a CNA for 10 years in the emergency room. So I traveled. I was doing a lot of traveling, and I found myself at MDI Hospital one summer, and it was just such a beautiful place to be. I brought the camper down. I had the kids come down with me every summer. So for 6 summers, we basically lived in the camper on the island for the summer. They went to summer camp. They had a great time.
Incredible.
Yeah, but then it was not as much a summer gig anymore. I kind of became a permanent returning boomerang, travel nurse. And so then in the winter time, I needed to find a place to sleep, and I would do a lot of couch hopping.
Oh, yeah.
With my friends, and my coworkers would be like, "Can I sleep at your house today?" So we ended up selling the camper and buying the condo so that I had a place to sleep in the wintertime. So, and then we rented
right
out
down
for the
in
summer.
Southwest Harbor.
Right in Southwest. So.
And now you rent it. So that's.
Yeah, we rented for the summertime, and then in the wintertime, I don't work there anymore. So we'll either, last winter we didn't have anybody in there. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I got involved in MDI and the island. And
well, I think that is interesting because my connection with Southwest Harbor, I might as well bring it back, is that my aunt Mildred used to teach school in Southwest Harbor. She was at Pematic High School way back before there was a consolidated high school. There was a high school right there in Southwest Harbor. Now I think it's an elementary school.
Yeah.
Right, in Southwest.
On Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It was the high school at the time, and I got to tell you this because, and we'll possibly do a show on this, but my Aunt Mildred taught school there, and that is when the World War II had just broke. The U.S. entered the war, and in the 40s. And Aunt Mildred resigned from teaching school at Southwest Harbor and joined the Navy. That was, I believe, in 1943. That is when they allowed women to enter the naval forces at the time. And so I brought her down back and forth to the reunions that the Pematic High School had until she passed away. She lived to be 98.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's because she never got married and had kids. She had no stresses. We could talk about that later,
that would
too.
be another show.
But then I joined the co-op, the artist co-op down there, the Harbor Artisans Gallery in Southwest. So I have a connection with Southwest Harbor too.
Nice.
Yeah, family, a long time. But that is what we kind of skipped over your profession, Nikki. Why don't you explain? You touched on it a tiny bit.
I touched on it, a tiny bit. I'm a registered nurse here in the state of Maine. I've been, I guess, I just say over 10 years now, because when you start going past that, you realize how old you are and how long it's been since you graduated. So over 10 years as a registered nurse in the emergency department. The emergency department's always been my passion. Just really, first of all, I'm an adrenaline junkie. You have to be to work in that kind of environment. But I also just really felt called to it. So I really enjoyed being there on somebody's worst day of their life. And trying to be there to make things different or better, or at least give them a smile to make sure that they know we were going to do everything that we could. So I just love the emergency room.
Where did you work?
I worked at Eastern Maine as a CNA in their emergency room, and then I did a lot of traveling up and down the floors as a per diem, and then I worked at the walk-in care.
Time out. Per diem, for people who don't understand what per diem is, what is that?
Per diem is you don't have a set job of a set title, not title, but a set schedule. You basically are just filling in. So you're not guaranteed any hours. You're not part-time, you're not full-time. You just show up when there's an opening.
Per diem Latin means per day.
Yeah, it's kind of the same, per day, because I would show up per day if there was an opening. If they needed, if they were short-staffed, then I would fill in those times.
Did you get, this is my own, did you get more pay, less pay?
You'll get more pay because you don't get insurance. So it's basically, you get a little bit more pay in lieu of insurance. But it's more of a flexibility thing where you can say what days you work or want to work.
And you did that flexibility work issue because of children?
Well, not at the time. Not at the time. I actually was pregnant with the twins in the emergency room when I was working there as a CNA. But then afterwards I stayed per diem. My entire career I've actually stayed per diem. And that's because of childcare and having two babies. My husband would work during the day. I would work during the night. I would work on the weekends. I would work the holidays. And so we were always offsetting each other for quite some time, 14 years.
So you didn't need to get health insurance on your salary. You got health insurance with Dustin.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
He's had the same job for 25 years. So.
Okay. What does Dustin do?
He is a mechanic for no heavy equipment.
Oh, okay.
So the things that pave the road and reset the road and tear up the road, he when they break down, he fixes them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. So where did you grow up?
I grew up right in Charleston, Maine. So right in the country.
And you were homeschooled?
I was homeschooled. I went to a Christian school for till the fifth grade, and then
Christian school
from the church.
Charleston?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
We went to the Charleston church, and then I went to a Christian school up to the fifth grade, and they closed, and then I went into public school. But there was a girl who was harassing me really, really bad when I was in 6th and 7th grade. Quite the bully. And I came home one day. She would hit me, she would kick me, she'd push me, she'd kick me under the table.
That's at the public school?
That's at the public school. And this was back in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. And I was told not to hurt anybody or retaliate or anything like that. So I just let it happen. And I finally told my mom, I don't want to go back. This is too much for me. And she was like, okay, we're going to homeschool you. She didn't want me in the public system anyway. So I was homeschooled for the rest of my schooling.
All the way through high school?
All the way through high school, yep.
And tell me, I think you alluded to that you met your husband through homeschooling?
We did. Once a month, all the homeschoolers in the area would get together at a church, and then we would do basketball games, some education. And he was also homeschooled, and he was lived in Orono. Yep, right in Orono. And
really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, he lived in Orono, and so we met him. I met him. His brother was the first one that all the girls were like, oh, he's so hot, he's so cute. And I was like, meh. And then the next meeting, he showed up, and I was like, I'm going to marry him.
So you knew right off the bat?
Right off the bat.
Wait, what? How old are you?
14. Yep, 14. So
that's great.
We just met once a month. We wrote letters back and forth to each other. We got in so much trouble because it was long distance back there. There was no cell phones. Okay. So we would write letters back and forth, but then we would call each other and be on the phone. and then my parents would get really big long distance bills.
Oh, right.
Because I don't know, for the new kids, for the youngins, you could call after 7 p.m. and you had reduced
Long distance
rates. Yeah.
Correct.
So,
and Sundays were even less, I think.
Yeah. So that we got in trouble a lot for being on the phone long distance and racking up some bills. So we wrote letters back and forth, and
wow, nobody does that.
Nope. I would draw on the back of the envelopes. I would actually do art on the back of the envelopes, or I would draw something and send it his way, and he just thought that was adorable.
Oh, so you didn't participate in, well, you could have, in extracurricular activities at a school while you were in high school, like sports or drama or...
Yeah, I couldn't because our schooling system, being in Charleston, was actually in Dover.
Oh.
And we grew up with only one vehicle and without a lot of money. So my mom couldn't get me to those things.
Okay.
So I did some town sports. I would ride my bike 2 miles to go play softball because, again, we only
on
had...
Route 15?
On Route 15,
Oh,
yep.
my gosh.
The
if
things
anybody knows what Route 15 is, it's not...
It's the highway
Yes.
between Bangor and Dover.
Right.
So, yeah, I would ride my bike everywhere without a helmet. Or
yeah,
knee pads
me too.
Or...
Okay, they didn't even have helmets invented in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, so I would ride my bike there so that I could participate in softball. And that's kind of how I started to learn how to take care of myself. And I started watching children and babysitting when I was 11. And I would get $1 per child per hour. And I would sometimes have 6 or 7 children that I was watching. And that's, I think I was 11 years old. I started to make money for myself so that I can get the things that I wanted.
Oh, yeah, I hear you on that. I'll just kind of parallel you, go back to my childhood. My dad became, well, he was an athlete, I told you, at UMaine, and my mom was teaching school in Lewiston. They both grew up in the Lewiston area. But my father loved baseball and tried out in Lewiston in 1955. He got selected by the St. Louis Cardinals, but he had a wife with a child on the way. So that back then, minor league players, yeah, get on the bus and we'll feed you. That's basically it. So he could not do that. So he went into coaching. And so his first job was Bucksport. Eventually, where I remember the most was he got the coaching, teaching and coaching at Orono High School. Mm-hmm. And he was there from 61 to 69. That's where I grew up. And
in Orono.
In Orono.
Okay.
Talk about riding bikes, and yeah, we were all over the... Orono was like...
You didn't come in until the street lights came on.
No.
Your parents just kicked you out.
Yeah, and my mother's big thing is, go out and play, stay away from the river. Yeah. Oh, that's where we went.
Right. There you go.
Yeah. But we rode around University of Maine. That was like... we used to go bowling in there when they had bowling alleys there. It was like our little playground. Mm-hmm. And they had, my dad being an athlete and coaching, I played baseball at recess. And I had a Ted Williams bat, a red Ted Williams bat. In fact, the school that was there is no longer. It was Webster Street School. And then we went up to Asa Adams School, which is there. And I got to just tell you, Asa Adams delivered me. He's a doctor in town.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He worked because my dad was at Bucksport High School, no car. A friend had to drive my mom up to the hospital, and so I was delivered up here at Eastern Maine. Well, it was used to be Eastern Maine, now it's Northern Light. But I was born on a Friday, and
I was born on a Monday.
Monday's Child, what is that? There's a poem, we'll have to talk about that too. But Dad had a football game.
Mm-hmm.
So
Friday Night Lights.
I'm not even sure if they had lights at Bucksport at the time, or the game was Saturday. So all I know is that Saturday at some point, another friend drove him to the hospital to see his new daughter.
Who was not a boy.
Not a boy, and hello. And actually, the person, I have to say, shout out, because Stuart Georgitis' dad, William, or Bill Georgitis, he was a teacher at Bucksport, drove my dad up. He had only boys. And so when they walked into the room where my mom, I guess I was there too, and says, "Oh my God, it's a girl. You are so lucky," because my dad was like kind of
bummed out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little dejected, like, oh, it's not a boy. But then my mother told me, he was so perked up. "Oh, look, you've got a girl, and she's got such dark hair." So I guess his were blonde and all bald, so he was pumped up.
I was born with fiery red hair.
Oh, and that's where you get your personality.
That is definitely, and it wasn't, only my grandmother has red hair in our family. So here I am, just walking.
Your twins have,
my daughter has red hair.
okay.
But before that, I'm the redhead, and then my grandmother was the redhead.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, do you have Irish background?
Scottish.
Yeah.
Scottish. So, I mean, I don't know the history of all that.
We could talk about that another time.
So, anyways, and you met your husband.
Well, oh, right. So, since my dad is a coach, okay, my current husband is my second husband.
Mm-hmm.
The first one we'll leave to another time.
Right.
But, so we met very first. My dad got hired at Colby College after teaching and coaching at Orono High School for 9 years. And his teammate from UMaine was the head football coach. Hired him as assistant football and assistant baseball at Colby. And we moved there in the summer. Now, my dad had also been rec director at Orono, so he started all kinds of basketball, softball programs for girls,
Mm-hmm.
and because boys were already
Right.
So we got to Waterville. Now, I was 7th grade. There was no girls softball team. There was no girls basketball team, and Waterville's a big athletic town.
What year was this?
This was 69, 70.
Yep.
And so my dad was coaching American Legion and in Waterville. And I like, "Dad, I don't know anybody here," because I was babysitting like you, very young age. And we could talk about how we each earned money some other time on the next couple of episodes. But the point is that I was a scorekeeper for my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember Donnie, but he was the shortstop on the team. His brother, he's a twin. So we have that twin connection too.
Yeah.
You had twins. I married a twin.
Yeah, twin. Twin vibe.
Yeah. So his brother, I remember he was the catcher. And he was loud. A catcher on a baseball team or softball team, they're the generals of the field.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very gregarious and loud. And I remember Ronnie. Do not remember Donnie was a shortstop. He was very the opposite. And so that's when I first met him. Now, he was 4 years older than me. Fast forward, so I'm in high school. Donnie now goes to Colby. My dad is the assistant football. He has him as a player. I used to go to all his, well, I would go to the Colby football games because my dad's one of the coaches. And I always tell him now, no other woman saw every one of your football games in college. But I didn't know him on the team either.
But you had to, because
But
you
I
were
was
the
there.
scorekeeper.
Well, that was baseball, but football, we just went as spectators because
Oh.
Dad was the coach, so we went.
Yeah.
So then I knew him. I was, it was fast forward now till the ice storm of 1998.
I remember that very well.
It was, I think my house on Mill Street in Orono was the only house that had power, other than it was right across the street from the elderly housing project. That's why. Anyhow, my sister, and here's another connection. My sister's husband was Donnie's roommate at Colby. So Donnie and Mike, my sister married Mike Roy, and he played hockey at Colby, and Donnie played football. 1998, someone gave Donnie, well, his friend, another doctor in Waterville, gave him tickets to go to UMaine hockey game. And my brother-in-law, Mike, said, why don't you ask Teddi? Because she's single now.
And you had met him and you knew about Donnie at this time, or no?
No. And my sister calls me and she goes, do you remember Don Joseph? I go, well, sort of. I mean, no.
Yeah.
Because this was the ice storm, right?
Right.
Like, I have a cold, Darren's sick, got no power. No, I don't want to go. And then she said, because Darren was 5 at the time.
Your son.
My son, Darren, yes. And he, but Sherry says to me, that's my sister, says, yeah, it's probably, he's got tickets to go to UMaine hockey. Okay, have him call me.
Right.
So it was a blind date, really.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we went to the UMaine hockey.
No Tinder back then.
No Tinder.
Couldn't see him beforehand, didn't know.
Well, apparently Sherry had gone to a Colby football game, and it could have been homecoming weekend or something. She saw him on the sidelines. They're talking, her husband and their cronies saw him, and she found out he was separated from his first wife, and and she was in Seattle, and he had moved here, and he was teaching and coaching. Well, no, not coaching. He was teaching at Lawrence High School at the time. So it was a blind date. I know it's a long story, but
it's a good story. I mean, it's funny that you met him really when you were young.
Yes.
And then had the situation for another time that you went through, and then was able to reconnect with him. And so that side and that viewpoint is different than my side, where I met my husband when I was young and I've known nobody else. And we just got married. He was 17. I was 8. I had just turned 18, and he said, let's get married. And I said, you're crazy. And he's like, no, I know what I want. And I was like, okay, sure.
And your parents?
Oh, my parents were furious because we were very religious, and we won't get into that, but we were very religious. And so his family was Buddhist, and my family was Pentecostal Christian. So that was the no. You cannot dive into another denomination. So let alone that. So, but I didn't care because I was very connected to him, and we became really good friends. And we both have a lot of family trauma. And we just basically found each other and just started moving through life together. And that's the rest is history 25 years later.
Well, no religion can argue with honesty and trust and love.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
So, it happens.
Yeah, it was. There was just no. My mother on my wedding day, she loves my husband now. By the way, she just loves him. But on my wedding day, we got married within 3 months.
Wow.
I worked 2 jobs to get the money I needed to buy a dress and put a potluck together, and it was. My mother said, "It's not too late. I'll take you wherever you want to go." And I just looked at her like, no. So it was. But I was 18 and my husband was 17. His mother had to actually sign the marriage license and basically hand him over to me. I love telling this story. I was his legal guardian for 6 months until he was 18. Yep.
So interesting.
I had, and he didn't have a driver's license, or there's again another day maybe, but so I had to do the driver's license, sign for those things for him.
That is
it crazy?
Really interesting.
Yeah,
so
our story is still very beautiful though.
Oh yeah.
So that's the history in a very long, short frame about how we met our husbands, because I think it's very important to talk about that, because I can't do what I do without my husband. I couldn't start my business without his support. I couldn't work per diem and go to nursing school without him working 2 jobs. He's always been that rock, that solid person that said, I will do what I need to do for this family. You go be great. And so I think it's really important that we use the first episode to share about our husbands.
Oh, totally. Because when the thing is you're talking about adrenaline high. I was a school teacher, an art teacher. But before I got any art job, I took the civil service exam to be an air traffic controller. And
sorry.
When that all shook down, I was teaching art at Calais High School, and that's when President Reagan had just got elected, and I got a letter, you're going to be hired for the federal aviation. I passed the exam.
Nice.
It was interesting. We could talk about that another time too. But so, they sent me a letter, you're going to be hired, but there is a government freeze on hiring right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that summer, June, the Calais School Committee terminated the art program at the high school. Then I went to the school committee meetings all summer, got it reinstated. Art was reinstated. And then there was the air traffic controller strike in 1981, I think.
I think I was 1 year old. I don't remember it.
Yeah, well, I kind of blacked out, and I got really there's a strike. They called me, you're in. And because of my art background and because of my athletic background, which I didn't really talk about quite yet, but
we'll get there.
Right. I passed that and became an air traffic controller. And you talk about adrenaline high.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always worked here at Bangor Tower, FAA Bangor Tower. So I worked as a radar controller and a tower controller and automation specialist and a temporary supervisor. But I would not have been able to work midnight shifts because it's a 24-hour facility
right
here if Donnie hadn't, my first husband we never really lived in the same town.
Mm-hmm.
Shocker, I wonder why that didn't work out. Anyhow, Donnie basically became an instant dad
Mm-hmm.
and took over so that I could do these crazy shifts.
Yeah.
And he was the same as Dustin. Yeah, you do what you have to do. So I came.
How long did you work as an air?
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was interesting. Let's just say that. We could go into that. But the point is that the importance of flexibility and freedom for 30 years, I mean, I was basically, you show up here at 6 a.m. and you work until this time. And we had different shifts consolidated, compressed, so that we'd have the most days off.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd start on a night shift, say work 3 to 11 or 4 to 12, midnight, 3 to 11, then maybe a middle shift, 10 to 6, and then 8 to 4 or 6 to 2, and then a midnight shift.
Right.
So that we would have like 2.5 days off,
Right.
or 3 days off, but you get off at 6 a.m. and you're kind of a zombie after working all night.
Mm-hmm.
So that was not really healthy living.
No. And I worked in the ER, which is high adrenaline anyway, but we did 12-hour shifts, which actually would turn into 13, 14-hour shifts. And then when I worked night shift, it was very difficult to nap before night shift, and then you just kind of do your 2-3 days, and then the day after, I mean, we got 4 days off, but the day after you're just trying to recover and recoup, and so that's a really great way to bring us to the whole purpose of this podcast, which is, and the reason that you're doing what you're doing with Modare, and what I'm doing with the RNN Wellness Lounge, is that those things that we didn't know about self-care, we didn't have permission for self-care, or we felt like we would be letting other people down if we cared for ourselves, has really led to issues with, health, mental, people pleasing, things like that. And so one of this, for the show, we want to really kind of get back to what we wish that we would have done for ourselves, and so that we can educate and help other people do it, because I don't believe, if I had been able to care for myself better, I don't believe I would have left the ER, because I was really good at it, and I did all the trainings and made sure that I was exceptional at knowing what I needed to do to save a life, but I burnt out, and that was just something that when I left, I didn't know who I was anymore. I had only known 20 years of high adrenaline, night shift, 12-hour shifts, not just go, 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 go. No time to stop for yourself. And so when I left, I just really knew that I was broken, and my spirit was broken, my body was broken. And so I took a year to kind of figure out who I was again. And that is something that we want to be able to help women and men do, instead of being who you think you have to be, is to start being who you are and who you're created to be, and how to take care of yourself. So
and living the best possible life that you can, because when you always have to have confidence in yourself before you can portray that in your job. I mean, let's just say every day working as an air traffic controller, there'd be an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, every day.
Don't tell me too much about it, because I am afraid of flying.
Oh,
so I don't want to hear too much about
as
the
air traffic
emergencies.
controllers, we cannot fly the plane, right? We can only give them advice where to go. and they have to follow it.
Right.
But the thing is that, you know, you have confidence issues when, let's face it, my every word was recorded and taped
Right.
and analyzed
Right.
every day. They couldn't wait to find something that we did wrong. That was, it was like the opposite. Instead of really praising people for doing something right, oh, let's pull the tape and see what's what, whether or not, because they were over the shoulder evaluations. We used to call them under the armpit.
Because it stunk.
Yeah, well, it was like, come on. But the point is that lots of pressure, lots of stress, and not, we were randomly drug tested and alcohol tested.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that was simple because I grew up in a family where my father did not drink at all. That was their upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And so as an athlete, he said, you want to be the best you can be, Teddy? You don't do drugs and don't drink. And so I didn't. I was a dad pleaser like thing. So that wasn't a problem. But working those long hours and late nights, and I'll just say I saw some, because obviously we have military civilian pilots and air carrier pilots, but one of the Air Guard pilots told me after I retired, he goes like, you know what, when I heard your voice coming in, I knew everything was going to be all right.
Oh.
And it was like,
Yeah.
it made me like, oh, phew, for all those years thinking that people are trying to find fault with something or another. And it was nice that, yeah.
And you were very determined to be great in what you were doing.
Oh, yes. I mean, nobody is like, you have a team with you, just like in the ER, and they're supposed to help you. But sometimes,
not so much.
Communication is the key. That's all I can say. Got to communicate. I'm a stickler with it. You know, even now, tell me, be honest, tell me the facts, tell me, and then we can handle it. That's part of, and not a lot of women, there are more and more women as air traffic controllers, and I was involved in the Professional Women Controllers Association, PWC. I was a vice president, national vice president, and ran conferences and things, but got to take self-care. That's the only way you're going to survive, because stress will kill us, as we know.
It will. So that will probably, we should wrap up.
Yes.
And that brings us to we all know about us, you know, a little bit about Teddi Jan, about myself, and we'll get into how we became the businesses that we have right now in the future. But Teddi, give us just a nice wrapped up version of why we wanted to do this podcast, why we wanted to talk candidly with each other, why we wanted to bring out the issues and talk about the issues and what the issues are going forward.
Well, I think that our whole motivation is to bring to light things that women, mostly women, I mean, we're two women who worked very hard and diligently in our professions. This is the way that, okay, I'm 68.
I'm 44.
And you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of anyone. And hopefully, yes, we want to make it exciting, we want to entertain, and we want to educate. And it's okay to take care of yourself.
It is. Yep.
And it's okay to want to. Now more and more women are playing sports, athletics. Pickleball's a big deal now for people in their 70s and 80s. Good. Time to do that. Time to celebrate you no matter what age you are.
I think that is very perfect. Oh, nice ending.
Thank you very much for listening.